Welcome to OverRushed, where we traverse the history of Rush Duel by opening all the sealed product released in chronological order. Today we are visiting April 4th, 2020, to open the starter decks that were released on this date. These were the very first product released from Rush Duel. There were 3 starter deck products released. There was first, starter deck Yuga, cut through Seven's Road, with the cover card being Seven's Road Magician in Super Parallel Rare. Then there was also starter deck Luke, Explosive Supremacy Dragias, with the cover card being Multi-Strike Dragon Dragias in Super Parallel Rare. These were released also as a 2-player set, which you can see here. The starter deck Yuga versus Luke. We can see here on the back, this basically says Yuga and Luke start deck. Deck set is included. So we have both starter sets in here. This listing here shows all the cards that are inside the starter deck Yuga cut through Seven's Road. And this set over here details all the cards that are inside starter deck Luke, Explosive Supremacy Dragias. The important thing about the 2-player set that differentiates is this bonus card here. This is Seven's Road Witch, which is included, as it says here, a super rare parallel. This card is not included in either of the original decks. While this card has 12 total printings as of today, this is the only time it was released in this rarity and its first printing. And down here it's basically telling us that there is 2 special dual fields. You can see a Yuga specific and a Luke specific dual field that are included. And we'll take a look at those when we open the set. The contents in this 2-player set, other than the bonus card, are exactly the same as these 2 original sets. So today, we're just going to open this 2-player set. So let's get started. All right, let's take out the contents of the set here. So we can see here, we have bonus card, we have the dual mats, we'll take a look at in a second, and we have the 2 decks. Yuga and Luke. Here is Seven's Road Witch, a level 6 spellcaster with 1600 attack and 1000 defense. The requirement for the effect, we can see down here, is send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard. And the effect that happens is special summon 1 level 7 or higher dark attribute spellcaster type monster from your hand, face up to your field. If you special summoned Seven's Road Magician, which is this guy right here included in the Yuga deck, by this effect, this card gains 400 attack until the end of the turn. The current price as of today of this is 40 yen for this printing, or 28 cents. Included in these sets are these dual mats. So there's 2 in this Versus set, but if you bought these original starter decks themselves, you only just get 1 mat per starter deck. So what's on these mats? We can see here, this is the one from the Yuga deck. It starts out here with some instructions about basically how to play the game. So this first box here is telling you that your main deck has 40 to 60 cards, and you prepare for the game by shuffling the deck and then playing rock, paper, scissors to decide who gets to go first. The second box here is telling you first to draw 4 cards to start the game, and then each player starts with 8,000 life points, and the goal of the game is to take the opponent down to 0 life points, at which point you win. And then here's the basic flow of how a turn operates. Effectively, you have a draw phase, draw until you have 5 cards in hand. You have a main phase where you can summon, activate spells and traps. Then you can go to your battle phase and then attack with your monsters. And then go to the end phase and move to the next turn. And you move to the opponent's turn after that. And it says here that you don't attack on the first turn. So here in the middle, we have just the general layout. You obviously have a field spell zone, extra deck zone, 3 monster zones, 3 spell zones, a graveyard, and a main deck zone. And then over here, there is some additional high-level rules. This first box is basically telling you how to normal summon, either face up or face down defense. This box is telling you about advanced summoning, which is normally known as tribute summoning in the TCG. For higher starred monsters, so level 5 plus monsters, you have to sacrifice a monster on the field. And then down here is basically telling you how to battle, high-level rules about battling. Effectively compare attack points and attack, and the monster will go to the grave. Down here it says if there's no monsters on the field, you can attack directly and reduce the opponent's life points. On the back of this is effectively an extended rule book for Rush Duel. So the first column here is just showing you the different kind of cards that exist, monsters, spells, and traps. This is just all detailed rules, so it kind of goes through each of the phases in more detail. Here's the, various phases and how to activate monster cards and monster effects, etc. And this is basically the battle phase. We come here with this extended battling example, which basically shows how to battle in different ways. And then finally, we end with a little bit of advanced rules, basically what happens when your deck runs out of cards, what do you do about legend cards, you can only have one of these per deck, how many times you can use a monster effect, etc. So this is basically just a complete rule book that exists on the end. Here we see the same dual field that's included with the Luke structure deck instead of the Yuga one. And this is exactly the same. The only real differences here is we have blue headings instead of red headings. These spell zones are a slightly different color. And the only other interesting thing on the back here is in the battle example, they use cards from the Luke structure deck rather than the Yuga structure deck, which was in the other form. So with that out of the way, let's get on with the opening. All right, let's start with the opening of the structure deck Yuga. So we start here. There's 14 unique cards within the deck, and we're going to see each of them. So we start here with Seven's Rose Magician in Super Parallel Rare. Today this retails for 220 yen or $1.53. Next, we have a rare card, Torna the Windweaver, effect monster. We then have two common copies of Torna the Windweaver right after that. Next up, we have Ansler the Magical Swordsman, and we have 3 copies of this. These structure decks are really, the starter decks are really made to be played as a complete deck. Just get them in play. So that's why they have multiple copies of each within them. Then we have 3 copies of Hydro Magician. And then 3 copies of Dark Sorcerer. All right, we have our next rare, which is Mystic Dealer. We have 1 rare and 2 common copies of Mystic Dealer. We then have Magical Beast Wolfang in common, 3 copies of this. Then we have a Spell Archer, 3 copies of this. We have 3 copies of Shining Shaman, again in common. We have 3 copies of Strange Cat. I really like this. Ring on the tail of this cat is great. All right, that's the monster cards. So we're now in the spell cards. And from the spells, we have Wind Spirit's Protection, and we have 3 copies of this in common. We then have 3 copies of Magical Stream. and now we have a normal trap card, Dark Revelation, and a rare printing, and 2 copies of Dark Revelation in common. And then we have the last card in the deck, Curtain of Sparks, 3 copies here. All right, and that concludes Structure Deck Yuga. All right, we're now opening Starter Deck Luke, Explosive Summary Dragias, named after the cover card right here, Multi-Strike Dragon Dragias in Super Parallel Rare. As of today, this card retails for 30 yen or 21 cents. We then have our first rare here, which is Gravity Press Dragon in rare, and then we have 2 copies of Gravity Press Dragon in common. We then have 3 copies of Fire Guardian in common printing. And then we have Dragon Knight of Darkness, and we have 3 copies of this. Then we have Dragarite, 3 copies of Dragarite in common printing. Then have our next rare with Twin Edge Dragon. We have 1 rare and 2 commons. Then we have Dragon Sage here in a common printing with 3 copies. And then Dragon Bat. You can really tell this is supposed to be basically Kaiba here. And then we have Phoenix Dragon with 3 copies in common. And then we have 3 copies of Draco the Tiny. All right, then we have our first rare spell, which is Draconic Pressure. We have 1 rare and 2 commons. And then we have Dragon's Inferno, 3 copies here in common. And then we have our trap cards. We have Dragon's Encounter, 3 copies. And finally, Vengeful Dragon's Counterattack, 3 copies as well. That's it. That is the end of Starter Deck Luke, which opens all the cards in this set. I hope you enjoyed watching the opening of Starter Deck Yuga versus Luke. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe for more of Rush Duel's history. Join us next time when we travel 7 days into the future to April 11, 2020, and open Deck Mod Pack Hyperspeed Rush Road, the first booster box released for Rush Duel.